Greetings, everybody. This is Christopher Messina coming at you from the Messy Time Studios. It is an exciting January 19th, 2022, and we're kicking off this year with a bunch of topics around market structure in the capital markets. Broadly speaking, for those of you who are fortunate enough to have not spent your life becoming an expert in market structure, what that generally refers to is how a different set of rules and regulations and market practices have evolved in various countries around how stocks are traded, how bonds are traded, how you access loans from banks, all that sort of stuff. So very familiarly, for those of you who have, or American, who have a E-Trade account or whatever, you log in and you enter a stock trade, and there are a lot of rules about it has to get filled at that level or better, and all that stuff is part of market structure, right? The interaction of government, private practices, material incentives, and capital. You come up with this sense of a deep liquid market, many participants, of retail all the way up to institutional traders. With me today is David Alvarez, a good friend who is a stunning expert in market structure, who brings to us a perspective from Latin America, where he spent a lot of his time. So David, thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Chris. A pleasure to be here. So
I'm going to dive in. I think with a huge topic. Asking somebody to talk about Latin American market structure is like asking them to talk about Asian market structure. It makes no sense. It's too huge. But perhaps you could give us your high-level thoughts as kind of what would be the most immediate differences an American would feel when trading in those markets, and maybe we'll jump into a specific.
Well, let me just go very quickly on the history of how the markets are viewed over there and some of the changes, and then from the American looking in to see how that might be different from here. So if we look back, most of Latin America, their whole structure, a lot of their rules and regulations came from Europe. So a lot, you look at their bourses, their exchange, the bourses are the exchanges. They have very much rules that came from Europe, whether they be from Spain, France, the UK, wherever they came from over in Europe. A lot of their rules are pretty much based on that. They didn't really go through the big bang that you saw in Europe and the US that happened in the 80s, right?
Right.
So they're starting to go through that now, actually, which is kind of interesting. So these rules that we see, that we've been seeing, as an American looking into those markets, you're going, why do they do this? Why, why
would be a big startling example? What would be the first thing where someone would be like, wait, what?
Well, I mean, a good example, and this is one of the topics I think we're going to get onto, is you look into Brazil. Brazil has so many rules and regulations on, you couldn't have a bank account with foreign currency. That is a local person could not. A foreigner could not open up a bank account over there with, in any form. It's very difficult. Over here, you can open it up. You can have a bank account. Over there were so many restrictions. So just that in being able to use the products there as a retail client, you'd find yourself so well restricted. An international investor trying to go in can't go in on their own. They have to have a local presence or a local partner to do things. The same thing in Mexico. I mean, the idea of you buying real estate in Mexico, before you used to have, you would need a local partner who would be your in a sense, your co-owner with you.
Right.
So these types of things are changing, and what we're seeing right now, and why I'm quite excited with Latin America, is you're seeing this change, almost in a sense like their big bang. A lot of rules are changing. So in Brazil right now, we just had a new law passed I think at the end of December, that is going to take all the regulations they've had since the 1920s that have never been touched. They're going to be changed, wiped out in a sense, and it's going to bring Brazil to the forefront for the first time. Their currency can now be used internationally, which didn't happen. There's going to be situations with that, but that could never be done before. Now it can.
And very quickly, for those listeners who think the Big Bang was the start of the universe, either 7.8 billion or 5,600 years ago, you pick. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the regulatory explosion that changed Great Britain's economic regulatory structure that allowed the growth of the city of London and the explosion of finance, right? So that's you say Brazil is going through the equivalent of Britain's Big Bang right now in terms of getting rid of the old rules and making people freer to participate in free markets.
Exactly, and also with fintech now is coming to the forefront. So there's a big change going on in Latin America where you're having fintech companies, hundreds of them are popping up everywhere, and they're competing against the old style, the old banks. And this is in every country. It's not just Brazil. It's in Mexico, Chile, Argentina. It's everywhere. So you're starting to see them pop up. And what I'm very impressed with is in countries like Mexico, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, is that they're welcoming them. They want that. They want that investment in there. Now, when we used to work together and we used to see, what was going on in Latin America, the big thing for Latin America is they just wanted technology.
Right.
But now it's not just technology. Now they want investment. So for the first time, we're seeing, look, the IPO market went crazy in 2020. We saw more investment into Latin America than we've ever seen. This has been incredible.
That's a major political and cultural shift in each of these countries. Whereas before, foreign influence was evil and was going to negatively impact us. Whereas now it's like, no, you want foreign direct investment. You want people to come in and be part of that knowledge transfer in addition to that capital growth. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. And when I was living in Europe, one of the big fears was when technology comes into the financial markets, everybody's going to be losing their jobs to computers, right? And that's not what happened. What happened is that it created much more business opportunities.
Right.
We saw for the first time, and this was what the whole Big Bang and the Little Bang, which was continental Europe, you saw them embrace technology. And yes, there were fears by everybody, but you saw them embrace it. And all of a sudden, the whole markets exploded. They started trading almost like 10 times their volume that they ever did before. It was so exciting. And you saw the whole community of bankers, traders, whether they be in foreign exchange or in stock markets, in bond markets, explode. And I mean, if you look at how many people are involved now, it's enormous. So I think that's what's happening right now in Latin America. And it started out in little pockets. In Mexico, I think in 2018, they had a fintech association develop over there. And now fintech is a very big thing there. They're really pushing it in Mexico. Brazil has already had it. So they've been pushing like crazy.
And that spans all the way. What I find funny about fintech, right? Having been there at the dawn of it in the late 90s, the fintech I've been involved in, you've been involved with, has mainly been institutional, right? How exchanges go, electronic clearing has become more efficient, all those big picture infrastructure monetary flows and making trading more efficient. But it's funny because you have to be careful when I say fintech to friends in Atlanta or Silicon Valley, they mean Venmo, they mean retail-based apps. So there's this massive explosion of technology that facilitates financial transactions or capital markets transactions from the retail to the institutional level. And I always find it funny when I counter folks, I don't know if you encounter that too, that they've got this preset idea of what quote unquote fintech means, but it can mean anything that does something better for you in a financial market.
Correct. But you touched on something that's very important. It is in the retail space that a lot of this is happening.
Yeah.
So like a Venmo or all these different payment systems are exploding now, and they're able to compete directly with the banks. The banks had a monopoly on everything. And that's really what a big bang or a little bang or this explosion is, that the monopolies that these large banks had, these financial institutions, along with the regulators, along with everybody.
That's the
who's
important
involved.
point people need to realize. It wasn't a quote unquote natural monopoly, which is they just provide a better service and everyone uses them. No, these are enforced by laws. It's illegal for you not to be a big bank. Right? You're not allowed to just set up a brokerage and charge less, like we used to have in the States before. Congress used to set brokerage rates for futures and stocks in this country. Madness, absolute madness. It was mandated. You had to pay $32 a round trip to trade a futures contract. If you work in a high-speed market now, you're trading less. You're paying 1 penny or less for that exact same thing. And yet, why has there been an explosion in these markets when everyone's only getting paid a penny instead of $32? Volume.
Massive volume. And this is what's happening. So the banks right now are actually, specifically in Brazil, I was just reading about this, the banks are now crying foul because now they have to compete.
Oh my God, I've got to work? You kidding me? I've got a tea time. My mistress is waiting. What do you mean?
Yeah.
They got to compete?
They have to compete. And what I'm very impressed with is that the regulators are starting to recognize that, countries like Mexico and Brazil, specifically those two, because they're the largest and they're I wouldn't call them the innovators, but they're the ones who are pushing innovation right now aggressively.
Right. And they got big populations relatively, so there's more of a market
compared to the other countries, correct. So they are really pushing this technology to file through the whole country, and it's wonderful to see because now we're starting to see things happen. Look at this new bank that just came out and did an IPO over in the United States. It was enormous. I mean, it put them up to the same level as any bank in Brazil that's been established for hundreds of years. They're now at the same level. We're starting to see this full change, and it's exciting to watch. The new regulations that are happening in Brazil, and I think it's important for any of the listeners to understand. It's come out. It's already passed. It will actually it will initiate at the end of this year in December of 2022, but they're going to be watching. I think there might be some tweaks, and if not tweaks, they're going to see if certain things, could happen. And one of the issues that I see is that, they're allowing a lot to happen. And I think there could be a lot of, let's say, issues with fraud, issues with money laundering, having bad actors who come into a country and see that they can use funds that they have abroad to do something. We don't know, and I don't know how they're regulating that yet. We'll have to wait and see. But I was reading a lot of the the legal announcement by the local lawyers in Brazil of all these new regulations just being pulled down. And it's an exciting period. I think for anyone who's entering the market, specifically the payment companies that are coming in, this is very exciting because what happens in Brazil, what happens in Mexico, is going to expand throughout to all the other countries. It's a wonderful time, I think, right now, specifically in Latin America.
But that's interesting to hear because most folks who either don't have family in Latin America, so don't have a reason to be there a lot, or we all know there's the home country bias in investing. That's just constant across the board, right? Most retail investors invest in their home country and they get nervous about whether it's because of exchange control, exchange rates, or range of reasons people don't get involved. But it's curious to see how different economies evolve. Argentina 100 years ago was a better sovereign credit than the United States was. Right?
That's right.
And so, but the more you sit still and ossify in a fast-moving, heavily evolving market, the greater the damage done to your society. And especially because the last 100 years, more changes happened in those 100 years than happened in the previous 10,000. Right. So things went linear for so long. And a lot of people, of course, made this argument that, in fact, an exponential or logarithmic change curve in near term looks really boring and flat for a while, and all of a sudden it explodes. Whereas, actually, if you look back, the change has been happening incrementally, and all of a sudden it looks like it exploded, but that's just the multiplier effect. So, if you're now saying to an American listener who hasn't ever invested in these markets, is this now a time where, because, say, Brazil, they've changed their laws such that now there's a very exciting time for any American investor to try to get an account that will connect to the Brazilian bourse, or is it a little premature and the change is more about I could travel, I could get real estate, I could open a bank account, or is it all the above?
I think it's a little bit all the above, although I'd be maybe a little bit cautious in the sense that I would use my, if you have an account at a large bank in the United States, they, let's say institutionally wise, would be a better connection than you just doing it on your own,
Right.
not knowing the local relationships and how things work over there. But for the institutions that want to get in, I think this is a great time. The one thing that I fear, it's the same thing that you see, and I hate to use Florida as an example because Florida has been on such a boom, but Latin America is a very interesting region. It goes from boom to bust all the time, like Florida real estate, which goes from
Hey, no,
boom
it
to
only goes
bust
up.
all
Until
the
I sold
time.
my last piece, it only goes up.
Right. So the way I
That's
look at
not
it
water
is,
sloshing around your ankles. No, no. You can drain that. That's fine.
yeah, the way I'd look at it is, I would definitely dabble in. I would look at, if I was investing right now, I'd be investing into certain companies that already have some established network over there already, and then continue to make the move because I think
They're
there's going
poised on
to be a,
they're poised to take advantage of these changes.
there are, yeah,
Grow
and
rapidly.
the technology is going to start to bring costs down for them. And as the regulation allows this technology to be utilized, that is going to be the expansion right then and there, because that's going to bring in volume.
Here's a question, right? So one of the most excellent things that happened in the last 30 years, say in Africa, especially, where once a country that goes through an evolutionary cycle of technology, right? People tend to believe that cycle was necessary, right? So when they began to replicate in the 80s, they began to replicate Western telecommunications infrastructure and huge distances in Africa, right? They began to put in wire, right? That's what we did. We had wired telecoms, right? There were a lot of reasons, for distance, a lot of reasons it did not work very well. But then they realized, I'm just going to put up, really strong repeating multiplier cell phone towers, right? So we're going to skip over an entire phase, right? When people look back at the history of telecoms development in North America, well, it happened a certain way, but it only happened that way because maybe if Tesla had actually, the real guy, not the car company that's vastly subsidized, maybe if Tesla's idea of distributed electricity without wires had actually worked, or maybe if he'd making the next leap and said, this should be done with radio waves, right? Maybe we would have started out with a wireless infrastructure. We didn't, right? So similarly, in Latin America, do you think that with a lot of these changes, and Brazil's big bang and Mexico changing the regulations, will a lot of them leap directly into the crypto world and bypass a lot of the stuff that Europe and the US and Asia slogged through in capital markets development? Do you think, is that on the horizon for any government's regulatory program that you're aware of?
Well, there's two forces going on that I see. One is that the country wants the crypto technology there, so they're allowing it to happen. They're going to regulate it just like the U.S. is getting ready to regulate it. I think look, all of them have joined on to this new tax regulation that's gone global, right? So everybody's in there, but they're pushing for crypto to be there. Crypto is already there in a sense. Let's be realistic. In Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, all the countries that were having payment problems or et cetera, or let's say people couldn't pay in dollars, started using crypto. So, when I was down in Argentina, and this is going back a while now, we were seeing people already using crypto to pay for their hotel rooms.
Right.
And they were starting to do that because there were regulations on currency. You couldn't take dollars in or out. It was a real pain. If you look at Venezuela, has you can't do anything. They're protecting all dollars there.
Well, you
The
go
same
there
thing
and
in
starve to
Argentina.
death.
Yeah, I have to admit,
so there's the freedom to die.
But Venezuela is an interesting story. We can get onto a topic with that because that's a completely different game. But in Argentina, with they were having such massive problems with inflation. You never knew what the price was going to be. A lot of the hotels started taking crypto. This is in the early days of Bitcoin,
Right.
and everything. And when I was down there, was like, why are you taking that? It seems like it's a toy. I almost look at them and like, the
But on
concept of
local
Beanie
currency,
Babies and
the price of your room is going to triple by the end of your 4-day stay.
yeah. But in local currency,
Yeah,
but
in local
crypto,
currency.
it was right. It was staying the same. So a lot of them took it. So you got a lot of these, early B&Bs that were taking crypto that are now doing extremely well. They have all this cryptocurrency that they got when Bitcoin was like at $3 or $5, and then went
Right.
up to maybe $500. So they were doing very well. But you're seeing this, and getting back to Latin America and the crypto markets, you're seeing them embrace it. They want it. They're allowing it to happen, but they are going to regulate it. So expect it to happen. Look, I mean, we already have seen one country has already adopted it completely, right? And I think that's El Salvador, right?
Yep.
So they've completely adopted. They go up and down with the value of Bitcoin. So you're going to see a lot of these countries start to take this on. I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's still fluid. Everybody's still trying to figure out where and when. But the technology behind the crypto currencies and this, like blockchain and the payment system, that's exploding, and that will continue. And that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity down there, because it's still fresh.
Right.
You don't
They
have
leapt right straight to it. They didn't spend a period of faxing each other back trade confirms for OTC swaps.
Yeah.
they never took that fun step.
Well, they are now. So the interesting thing is it is there for payment companies. I think this is a great time to get in, whether you're in crypto or not in crypto. It doesn't really matter. If you're a payment provider, getting into Latin America right now is great, because you have such a great opportunity. There's nobody's dominant. Right. There's going to be a lot of companies out there. You're going to see a lot of consolidation going on in the few years. But if you can get some market share, get it on now. Online banks, get in now. The regulation is allowing for it to happen, so you can compete against a large bank over there. And I mean, look, we're seeing a lot of these exchange platforms that are coming in to do, whether they're 24-hour exchanges or they're exchanges that can do anything. I would like to see how the dominant existing exchanges there that are government regulated, how they
react. If they react.
I have no idea what's going to happen. But I mean, you look at Mexico. Mexico had their bolsa, their existing bolsa, and then you had a new bolsa that came out, the electronic bolsa. But Chile had that for many years already. They already had their bolsa, which is the dominant one, and then they had the bolsa electrónica, which was unheard of, but it happened in Chile, a long time ago.
It's the same dynamic. It's not unique to Latin America. I mean, you have in Australia, the US, and Canada, London, like everyone came out with new exchange models. The first, the incumbent exchanges hide behind the regulators and make the regulators go put onerous constraints on the newbie, right? That's the first thing, put up huge barriers to entry. And then spend more of their time trying to figure out how to quash this thing, as opposed to, I don't know, providing better service so people want to use you. Crazy idea, right. I know. But well, we dive into that another time, especially I want to do a discussion about Venezuela. Never-ending fun.
I have a lot of information there. I think will be interesting.
That's awesome. But until next time, is there one sort of final note on that you'd like to leave us with, or there's no summary for the topic?
I think there's great opportunities in Latin America right now. Just with everything, just be a little bit cautious. There are new regulations coming on. And I think I hear a dog in the back.
That's awesome. We love dogs on the show. They're never an interruption. They're an augmentation. So until next time, David, thank you so much for coming on the show. And everyone else, tune out the mainstream media. They just lie to you, and tune into Messy Times. Talk to you all soon. Cheers.
Take care. All the best.